Huntdown.
What is it about 80s sci-fi, huh? It's just one of those things that just never seems to disappear. And 80s action platformers were also a lot of fun as well, like the likes of Turrican and Ghouls and Ghosts, Rainbow Island, Shadow of the Beast, all those kind of Psygnosis type games like Leander as well. And those games just really had something about them. There was the element of challenge, which was always difficult and enjoyable, but always you felt like you wanted to make progress in them as well, because they've had this kind of fantasy aura about them, and they really just inspired this tenacity. Well, I have to say, having played Huntdown, I feel like that is the game that's really the closest to those 80s action adventures that we all used to know and love. And it nails it so perfectly. I mean, you can already see kind of the 80s inspired, infused kind of sci-fi, that you get hallmarks like the Blade Runners and the Total Recalls, and it really suits, and it suits this kind of aesthetic of game. And I feel like it's something that we haven't explored for a little while in the action and platform adventure. And those types of games they always seem timeless and enjoyable again and again and again. And while kind of my patience for kind of like, the really tough, challenging games has probably diminished over the years, I have to say with kind of the way that Huntdown has been crafted with its checkpoint systems, and the diversity in the battles and the kind of the variance in the arsenal of weapons you have access to, it works for me. It really, really does.
The Huntdown is initiated. Our first matter is an urgent one.
This mission I'm going to take on Sid Handsome. I'm going to really show you just the one mission from beginning to end with the hoodlum doll, so you can kind of get a feel for the game and see how it plays. But if you want to look on the channel later on, there'll also be a straight gameplay video as well with no commentary as well, so you can check out the game for yourself. And you really should listen to the music, by the way, because it is superb and, again, distinctly 80s sci-fi. But yeah, as you can see here, I was able to use a Uzi there, but you can also pick up baseball bats. You actually use cover, which is obviously something that wouldn't have really been applicable to those 80s platformers way back when. You could duck behind police cars, you can duck into archways. And just really use cover fire as a real mechanic, which to keep the survival levels up in this. But even despite all of that, this is probably the closest action platformer I've, to those 80s games that we know and love from years past. The difficulty is pretty harsh at times. There's no sort of diagonal shooting, there's no upward shooting, which is probably going to feel really authentic and natural to those who grew up with those types of games. That's become more of a modern thing with like some Metal Slug really kind of normalizing that. And there's always those overly lengthy intro sequences, like that scrolling text and that static imagery. But then the art style in this is just so beautiful, and it just works. And I'm sort of seeing an example here of what happens when you die and die. Basically, at every checkpoint you have Tony's surgical repairs there, and he kicks you out of the back of his truck as good as semi as you can be new. But I just kind of wanted to show you, what happens when you die and die. And there is that element there, which obviously if we'd been talking a proper 80s platform, you would have been starting probably at the end of the level, and in some cases the beginning of the game, because it was that harsh. So there is a checkpoint to kind of make things a little easier, but then again there are also tougher difficulties. So if you really want to challenge and test yourself, there's a badass mode, which basically makes you feel like a badass. But I mean, the steady camera pans, the moody black aesthetic, and there's the vintage character and stage select screens. This is so old school 16-bit, I thought I'd accelerate time a little bit so we can see the level progress a little bit. But just needless to say, I died a few times in this particular section. It was not easy going. But this post-apocalyptic future and that 16-bit aesthetic, it just all works so well together. And I think there's messages on the wall there which kind of relate to things that you know and love from the 80s culture. There's even like the similar difficulty curve as we mentioned, but there's a lot of bouncing between platforms, scrolling around, side-scrolling for the screens, shooting, ducking, weaving. And also bearing in mind the different kind of enemy types you're going to come up against, because certain weapons are probably going to be better than others against them. So you can see I've just made a checkpoint there, so I'm making my way gradually to the bounty, which is going to be, there's always a challenge as you well know. But the flow and the fluidity of these games is it's great, and the kind of the aesthetic of it is genius. There are stashes you can collect, as you've just seen there. They kind of like add to your bonus rewards at the end of the bounty once you've collected it. But you can also select, which kind of bounty you want. So I've kind of gone for the yellow trench coat masked man, who's you know, a bit of a badass, but then you've also got a female bounty hunter and there's another male bounty hunter. And yeah, I mean, this gives you an example of that weapon diversity I was talking about. Take a look at this. This is just gonna mulch through everything. And you know, you've got, it kind of gives me those kind of Doom vibes a little bit as well. You know, the chain guns and the auto rifles and the pistols. Yeah, I love it. Just so satisfying indeed. But I mean, what I love as well about this game is how diverse the boss battles are. I mean, you've got everything from like a professional wrestler, you've got a Shogun warrior, there's even an anaconda you have to fight, there's helicopters. This game just is creativity from beginning to end, and I think that's something that really works in its favor. Is not only you've got the collectible, you know, that you can go back and get the collectibles, the environments are all very different, but the boss battles also feel very fresh and exciting. And also, if you watch this as well, I'm actually going to pick up a guitar and I'm going to smash people upside the head with a guitar. I mean, how many games let you do that these days, right? It's wonderful. But this also has 2-player co-op as well, so if you want to play side-scrolling with a buddy, that is something you can do, and it might actually be, you know, it might help you get through some of the tougher stages. This game really does become challenging on your own, so if you've got someone backing you up, that might really help in a pinch for sure. And as you say, every time you killed, you also you know, get that checkpoint system, which can help if you're a single-player gamer as well. So what you're about to see now is one of the first boss battles in Huntdown. So this guy is pretty easy going. He's probably one of the easiest bosses in the game. He's basically just like, he lifts some weights, pumps some iron, throws some dumbbells at you, and kind of just really gets in your face. So, but you'll also see as well, like I'm going to use different weapons for my method of attack here. You're going to see how effective certain weapons can be against bosses. So you can kind of see what works and what doesn't. In other situations as well, sometimes you'll find yourself up against vehicles, which you'll also see in later levels. Uzi is kind of working well, but also not perhaps to the extent that the shotgun has been working. So, and obviously don't let this guy get too close, otherwise you'll get a fist for your face, which is not really pleasant, let's face it. The only thing about this guy is the fact that he does manage to revive himself all the way up. So you think you've got him right down on the ropes, and then he's just reviving himself right back up, and it's all of a sudden he's back to square one again. And he also gets more aggressive, which never helps. But you know, I think with Huntdown, it's just one of those types of games that just, oof, yeah, that ricochet is deadly. It's not it's one of those independent games that I think has just really sort of come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden I would say it's contending itself as one of the top indies this year, and it's so entertainingly fun. I think for me, what's beautiful about it is that it captures everything that's great about those old school 80 action side-scrolling platformers, and it also blends it with this kind of the style of this modernized style that makes it applicable and, you know, accessible to modern gamers, while also still providing that really tough challenge that you've come to expect from these types of games. And it kind of gave me an appetite again to dive into the likes of Turrican, you know. So watch this here. I've picked up this crowbar, which is really quite cool, and actually you can see this is really effective against Sid Hansen. Look at that, he was taking chunks out of himself. He does not like that. And there you go. And that's the bounty beaten. That's the bounty claimed. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Again, look out for the gameplay video on the channel. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. See you for the next one.